Epik Mellon podcast, conversations with the real humans behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications. Brought to you by QA Cafe.
Oh, hello everyone. I just got back from Paris and boy, are my arms tired. Welcome to another episode of the Epik Mellon podcast. I am Jason Walls from QA Cafe, and I have Pedro from the Wireless Broadband Association, who I have interacted with incidentally on many occasions, and then finally officially last week.
That's really true.
Because QA Cafe are now WBA members, so it's pretty cool. But you have an energy about you, and it's made me want to like get you on the show so that I can find out your story and how it is that you even got to be where you're doing right now. So we're going to talk about that. As always, this show is brought to you by my employers at QA Cafe, and the views expressed by myself or Pedro do not reflect those of QA Cafe or its ownership. And it is brought to you by our three great products at QA Cafe. The first being CD Router, the industry standard test platform for broadband gateways, Wi-Fi devices, and other customer premises equipment with over 10,000 test cases that are developed by the awesome people that are sitting right over there, experts in the industry that are all fully automated, work with your CI/CD systems and help you build better products overall. Second is CloudShark Enterprise, which is our enterprise-grade packet analysis solution for deploying a Wireshark-like experience across your entire organization with the ability to search across an entire database of captures, split them up, spin them around, do whatever you need to get to the answers you need, and make it easier for novices to work with experts without losing all that valuable information. And lastly is Packet Viewer, which is the power behind CloudShark that lets you put a Wireshark experience directly into your cloud managed networking or cybersecurity products with just a couple of lines of code. And it's actually really cool so that you can complete that story when that would normally stop at download the PCAP. You can find out more about CD Router, CloudShark Enterprise, and Packet Viewer at www.qacafe.com. That's it. Yeah.
No, that's very good. Absolutely.
You think I'm reading that? I'm not. It's now burned.
Really. That's fantastic. No, but it's quite good. Absolutely.
Yeah. So cool. Yeah. No, it's like I said. I'm glad to have on the show. And like, so I've talked about like the standards world a lot, obviously, on the show, and how there's a couple things. There's a couple themes that I always say. Right. It's like very few people got into networking on purpose. And then even fewer people got into standards on purpose. So I'm curious about your story when it comes to that. Like, how did you even get to the point where you're doing this specifically?
No, really, thanks so much, Jason. Really, I hope, of course, that I'm able to bring value as well to your podcast. I think that's an amazing initiative, really. And it's a pleasure as well to have you guys, of course, joining the WBA. For us, I think it will be paramount, really, to unfold some of the problems across the industry. But when it comes to my very humble history, is nothing really major. I mean, I would say, so actually I come from a business administration standpoint. I've studied business and economics, major in strategy. Everything that I pretty much look into, I always bring these managerial perspective, trying always to understand the foundations of the business, the vertical approach, the value chain, right? So that's something I'm very keen to learn. And then what basically happens very quickly, Jason, is that when I'm finishing college, I'm from Portugal, right? So I'm based in Lisbon, and basically we had these very large incumbent in Portugal called Portugal Telecom. Nowadays they are called Altice. They've been bought by Altice because back in 2014 there was a problem with a very large bank, private bank in Portugal as well, and basically they got into some fraud scheme and
really, I didn't know that.
Exactly. So that's the issue of what was back in the day the best, largest, and most innovative company in the country, Portugal Telecom, and I missed those times a lot, of course. So when I finished my master degree, basically I thought, well, wouldn't it be amazing really to work for PT or one of those companies? But really I had this idea since 2007 that PT was such an innovative arm, really amazing company. And basically, I had the luck to do a summer internship in Portugal Telecom. I was first in the enterprise cooperative marketing team, and that's where I basically started learning about mostly like infrastructure, like IT, cloud services. I became then a product manager for a series of products. And then basically what happened is that I moved towards different roles in my career, and I ended up here in WBA with Tiago Rodrigues, our CEO. He was not the CEO back in the day, but basically we intertwine, we connect through Portugal Telecom mutual contacts, and I came to WBA to help him and to help the organization, because I really think it's a much broader and different perspective. So when we go from a corporate environment where we have all these open offices, right, and we have so many people to work with, such a heavy ship, as I always say. So a telco is a very comprehensive, right, organism. Lots of silos, lots of business units, competitive internal dynamics, and we
Yeah.
come to an organization that is so small, so agile, everyone working remotely. So I really think it's an interesting paradigm. That's basically how I came into the standards world. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I think it has been quite an interesting journey so far. Would love to hear from you as well, Jason.
Well, I mean, not that people on here don't know my story, but it's that I appreciate everything about that, because it's like I said, it's like I I have a bit of a computer science background, right? Because I basically like floated in CS and EE for a while. And then I was like, I don't know if I want to do this all the time, right? And I was also not very mature, but like it was actually the philosophy department at the University of New Hampshire
Really?
that I ended up landing in. But the whole time I was working at the UNH Interoperability Laboratory, right,
Hmm.
where very many of us at QA Cafe worked, right? I think it's like 75% of us worked there. Um, and what was cool about that place is that it brought in anybody, right?
Hmm.
Well, you didn't have to be an engineer to work there, because networking technologies, it's not that they're not complicated, but there's a low bar to entry, right? It's very easy to start getting involved in the process and starting to learn how protocols work and how the basics of the technology work, and then applying the things that you might have been learning somewhere else to this entire situation, right? So the same reason I got into
Completely.
standards is, you know, I I just I'm just passionate about it, but also like leveraging those skills that you learn about
Hmm.
managing people, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And having a group of competing interests trying to get something done without, you know, stepping on each other, or
Absolutely.
going somewhere else, right?
It is
It's
indeed. It is indeed. Mhm.
it's extremely rewarding, right? Especially when you see this stuff actually come to fruition.
Yeah. Yeah, which sometimes takes a while, right? I mean, when it comes to the industry bodies like standard world, sometimes you're working on something that might take place 5, 6, 10 years from now, and
Yeah,
sometimes might even never come to reality. There's, by the way, a place where WBA really gets into the industry ecosystem, just because very often we work on something that is readily available right now, and some of the members, they also value that a lot. Instead of working on something that is future looking, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they can work on something that is already available, but has some type of adoption gap. And
right,
basically, we can try to make it workable, right? So sometimes it's just the way it is communicated to the industry. Sometimes it's really, we need some type of mixed solutions. We need to add some different components to make it more adoptable.
right,
But yeah, so basically, when it comes to the standards, Jason, I don't know exactly from your standpoint, and many other people, of course, they have different perspectives. When I look to the standards really, and to WBA's role, to the mission that we are trying to accomplish, I always try to think in terms of major human, how can I put this right, society adoption level, in a way that it truly adds value to the whole society. So what I mean by this is I'm not so much into the latest technical gadgets, or that's not necessarily my style. I'm more into how can we really address tangible problems that will improve the quality of life of the citizens.
yeah,
So I'm very much into
100%
it.
agree, right? Which is super ironic, right? Because one of the things that I really appreciated about working at the Interoperability Laboratory at UNH is that it was effectively a private organization, because it was funded entirely with private money.
Mhm.
And so there was there was very often sometimes a disconnect between the way that we did stuff there and the way that the rest of the university and professors and things want to do that. And it's exactly what you're talking about, where and it ended up making me kind of shy away from it. And that's part of why I like working for the BBS, for the Broadband Forum, and working with WBA, is there is that level of practicality, like, right, that level of like deployability, right? And I actually kind of like shy away when somebody comes in with a research project, being like, well, that's cool, but how can we actually use it, right? And that's actually
Absolutely,
paid
absolutely.
off a couple times, right? With the guys from Domos when they originally had all their quality assurance, quality, what is it? Quality of experience delivered QED. It's like the Delta Q
Mhm.
mathematics and all that behind making, um, you know, figuring out what's actually wrong with somebody's experience rather than speed and all that. That started
Exactly.
off as research, right? But they really, really dived right into trying to make it practical. And so we're like, yes, come on,
Yeah, we've talked with them as well for L4S, a way to
yeah,
really reduce, improve the scheduling and reduce
yeah.
congestion of the network,
They're
reduce some
they're the
availability.
guys. They know it better than anybody.
That's right. But absolutely, it's a world, as you're saying, Jason. Right. So the standards world is precisely where you can bring together players that are highly competitive. Right. So they have their own proprietary solutions. They have their own IPs, their own dynamics. They compete, and basically they come together because in certain aspects they believe that it's better to work together. And what we are seeing, I think, moving forward, to be honest with you, if I'm not reading it wrongly, is that we are seeing a higher trend towards that direction. So
Yeah,
we are at this moment in time, possibly from the operator perspective, because other verticals might have different dynamics, but from at least the operator standpoint, I think we are clearly in this convergence and aggregation way in terms of reducing costs, so maximizing operational efficiencies really, and
right.
there's no room really for creating something that is not either scalable or efficient, something that will bind the operators to a given vendor, for example. So this type of moment that we're living right now, I think benefits a lot from standards. And there's also, yeah, absolutely. And for example, so QA Cafe brings such an important value proposition really for enhancing those standards because of your, for example, testing capabilities with CD Router.
hmm Yeah, and it's kind of interesting for us at QA Cafe because, in the same sense that we were very neutral at the Interop Lab, I feel like we weirdly get to be in a neutral position, right? Like I don't know if I would ever want to work for a vendor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially like or like on the device management side or anything like that, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a very competitive, and like I feel like I would lose
Absolutely.
that level of neutrality, right? It's like being in testing, we kind of get to be like, okay, everybody just slow down a minute and let's look at the big picture, So I
Exactly.
like that
Exactly.
I've got to preserve that neutrality a little bit, being here.
Yeah,
Um,
you're a facilitator, right? An enabler, basically, and
yeah,
you're there to help everyone. That's fantastic, actually. You don't need to get into the competitive as well landscape, the dynamics, right? I totally understand it, and you can just
right.
focus on really maximizing value for your clients in this case. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really fun because we end up going to a place
Mhm.
like Network X, and unlike you know in Network X, very often or at any trade show, the division is like, here are the exhibitors and here's the visitors that are coming to buy stuff from the exhibitors, and we're like, wait a minute, everybody here is us.
Exactly, exactly. And was it positive for you guys as well? How was the week, by the way, Jason? So
It was
was it?
really good, and
Yeah.
I hit this home so often on the show, and right, like meeting people in person is absolutely necessary to life and business experience. Like
Mhm.
you have to. Like
I
there
also
are
agree.
just things that would absolutely not happen or even like occur to you to happen
Mhm.
on the phone, on email, right? There has to be this sort of like initial like impetus to do something first. Whereas your work, I have a perfect example, right? Talking about
Mhm.
Altas. We're sitting around with Sergio. You know Sergio? Um,
From Altis, yeah, I know
yeah,
him.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I have not yet talked with him personally, but I know exactly who
yeah.
you're talking for
Yeah,
about him.
he's great. He's great. I'm going to try to get him on the show
Mhm.
too. We were sitting around talking to him, and there were some other customers of QA Cafe that were happening to walk by, and we were like, "Hey, it's those guys," and they're like, "It's true. That would have never happened. It never would have
Exactly,
happened,
exactly,
right?"
exactly, exactly, absolutely, absolutely. And that's just one example. I mean, that's fantastic, of course, to create that dynamic to show exactly how you are as a person. But yeah, specifically touching on that point as well. So the idea of working more and more from home these days, or remotely at least, I'm one of those guys as well, that I totally understand the comfort, right? I understand that is fantastic for human beings in general to have so much more flexibility, to be able to have so much more time avoiding commuting, right? So I totally understand the comfort. I do believe in any case that it's really, we might be missing a lot that human contact, by the way. I think it's so important, really. And not
Big
only
time.
really from a mental standpoint, right? Like social anxiety, for example, then when we are finally with people, but really some social skills that we might be hindering a little bit. Yeah. And I care about those as well. In any case, when I was working, sorry, my English, in terms of the corporate environment, I used to be that type of guy, just with phones, trying to
Yeah.
ignore as much as people, just focus on my work. And now I think, oh man, unbelievable. Now we miss that contact. Yeah.
Right, right. And I bet you experience it now too, like managing a standards group. When you have new people that come in, like I always try to just make sure that like they feel welcome right away, right?
Absolutely, that's
Because
so important.
it's like a switch in people's brains. Like once they notice that you're not that you're authentic. Once people see authenticity, they're like, oh, okay, I can relax, you know?
That's right. That's right. But I just love the expression. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so important. Absolutely, that's so important. People need to
It's
understand, of
happened
course.
so many
Yeah,
times, right?
yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely.
there's been times where I've ended up,
Mhm.
Madura, I'm talking about you, and you're going to be on the show eventually. I promise.
Okay.
She keeps resisting it. On the broadband form side of things, there's Madura. She was kind of new, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Hey, you're here. This is your first meeting. Welcome. Come out with us." Blah blah blah. And now she's like in charge of the project. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
"Aha!"
But that's outstanding, and I imagine you guys also do it as well in BBF, and which is basically the following. So we talk about this a lot internally in WBA. So WBA, we try to make it a highway. Okay, so basically our job here is to give you the highway, so that if you want to run, you can run, and of
Mhm.
course, and that is so important. So not only, as you say, Jason, to make people really feel welcome to the ecosystem, will of course find it's such a complex environment because you have individual delegates but then have their corporate behind them, so they need to understand how to dialogue internally, but then how to expose themselves as well, and how to get visibility, so, and what type of influence they want to have. But also there are people that of course they don't see, for example, much value in getting highly involved. Others are just trying to observe and learn. Others are really willing to push forward and drive. And for those specifically that they want to drive, we need to be as flexible as possible. We need to allow them, give them the reins, basically let them do whatever they want. So WBA is a good example, and I think BBF might be similar in that regard. Is an entirely members-driven organization. It needs to be. So it can never be seen as an organization where it's going to be Pedro or my colleagues, right, influencing whatever. We are there to help. Absolutely, we support you guys, but it needs to be members driven because, yep, that's the main purpose. Absolutely, it's about the members
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
together and help working.
And I'm sure you've seen this over the years. Like you can tell the difference and I would even say there's several categories. It's not just two. You can tell the difference between who's there to contribute something because they want to make it a standard and have everybody work together and do all that
Mhm.
stuff, right?
Yeah,
And there's a good faith argument, right?
yeah,
Um, versus the person in between that who that is what they're trying to do, but they don't necessarily know how to do it without taking their corporate hat off, right?
yeah. Absolutely,
And then
that's
the
perfectly
and then
true.
the third
Mhm.
kind who's like, I'm here to push my agenda.
Exactly.
And that's obvious, right? And then there's a kind
That's
of
fine
like
as
when you
well.
start
That's fine as well.
seeing,
But
yeah, no, it is until it's like when you start seeing sort of the bad faith arguments coming in, and it's like when people come in and they present something, you're like, just so you know, now that this is a thing, you don't expect that it's not going to change,
yes, exactly.
right?
You can think that way. Absolutely, you can talk. We always try to manage as well expectations. Absolutely, that's so important.
Right. Yeah.
There was a
And
good
I really,
example.
I feel like really feel that people are, drawn. Again, people are drawn to authenticity, and you can see when it's not.
I agree with you. I think that that's really so important. Those values. I know maybe we could talk a little bit more about technology, but just speaking on those points because it's so important. I really believe honesty genuinity, as you're saying, right? The human relationship is absolutely paramount in anything we do in life. So I agree with you that is so important. Absolutely.
I love it. Anyway,
And when it
that's why we
comes,
do this show.
absolutely, and I think that's a really good initiative, by the way. I think very well done from KKF and yourself as well, Justin. So there was a good example as well when it comes to, for example, operating manager Wi-Fi in WBA. I don't know if you'd like to get into that domain, but just to give you an example, when the members were putting together that group, right, they always thought about specifically multi-vendor, standard-based, interoperable technology. And
Right.
the thing is that some of the members, they were quite conflicting when a certain more vendor-based player has come into play and were trying to push their solutions,
Yep.
which from my standpoint is totally fine. I find the competitive dynamic always very healthy, by the way.
Yep.
But for the members, of course, that stress them a little bit, right?
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
then the thing at the end, just to conclude this example, is that eventually the team took a decision. So they want to keep it standards-based, multi-vendor, interoperable. They did not allow that specific vendor to come into play and influence the direction of the work, the
Right.
operating manager Wi-Fi reference architecture. But at the end of the day, some of them think that WBA, for example, aims to protect only standards-based technology, right? Standards-based protocols and technical specs that are coming from IEEE, ITF, even Wi-Fi Alliance, of course. And here I always tell them, well, to be honest with you, there's no such thing in WBA rules. So WBA is here to help the members developing whatever work they want. Then they submit it, they vote on it, they prioritize that work, and we are just here to help them. Okay.
And coincidentally, it usually means that people want
Coincidentally,
standardized
yeah,
stuff, but it's not,
exactly,
it's not a necessary condition. Yeah, I get you.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
Justin.
No, and so I know who you're talking about, and we don't have to name names. I do. I know who you're talking about. Many people probably do, but even that particular company has eventually had
Exactly,
to
exactly.
fall by the
That's
wayside
outstanding.
of standards, right?
Yeah, it's. I
And
mean, I'm not saying outstanding on my personal opinion. I'm saying it's interesting
yeah,
to see that evolution. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's very interesting. And Lincoln, have you met Lincoln? Actually,
Lincoln,
Lincoln
yeah, from
technically,
BBF as well, right? I seen
yeah,
him
yeah,
as well in his at
technically
events.
he doesn't exist, right? There's a running gag on this show that he's not real and I made him up, right? But he's my best friend. Yeah.
Really?
He's my best friend. I've lived with him for many many years, and
Fantastic.
um, he we so both of us have been doing this for 20 years, and we have this running gag about the 12-step process of technology and
Mhm.
standardization, right? And it's almost like the 12 steps of sobriety or whatever is like, and every single technology goes
Goes
through
through the
that same
same path.
process. Yeah,
Really? Okay.
right. The same path. It starts off proprietary. There's pressure to make it standardized. People fight against the standardization. They start to accept the fact that it's going to be standardized. They fight the standard a little bit, right? And this goes on and on and on until step 12, and then finally
Exactly. It's a market dynamic. I love that topic, by the way. I never thought about it, to be honest. I think it's fantastic because it relates to macroeconomics, and it's really cool. It comes down to the competitive dynamic, right? For example, so there was a technology, Wi-Fi sensing. You might be related as well with that, of course. So we've seen slightly a different perspective there that I like just to share with you. So the first group was developed in WBA to really advocate Wi-Fi sensing. But then what we've seen, in fact, was that key vendor companies within that motion detection space, they were actually the ones wanting to standardize it. So here we've seen something slightly different, maybe from what you were mentioning in terms of the 12 steps, just because they thought commercially that would be so much better for them, I think, right, to having standardized that technology and
yeah,
having them as the key leaders within that space. So they
yeah,
thought, okay, let's make this broadly available and let's be the leader and be the
right,
best.
yeah.
And
You
that's
heard it,
really
everybody. That's the
interesting.
way to go.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was really fascinating. Absolutely,
Yeah.
that
Well, and what's cool
slight
about
nuance.
that, and I think that pressure's going to happen. Are you ready to dive into this? Because here we
Yeah,
go.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
uh, I'm going to say the words AI, and I don't mean it,
Really, no?
but I'm saying it only because that's what people understand.
Uh-huh.
And what we really mean is large amounts of data and what you do with it, right? Whether or
Exactly.
not it's AI or not.
Good old big
That
data back in the day.
as as things get more standardized across all aspects of we'll just talk about broadband for now, but all aspects of the network, of the worldwide network, right? As those things get more autonomous and we're actually trying to use all these technologies we have to make everything better and easier using
Mhm.
large amounts of data. The
Mhm.
data has to be standardized, right?
Mhm.
The types, right? Like literally down to like data types and all that stuff. Like we think when we say data models, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
That's what we're talking about, right? It's
Yeah, I
standardized data
totally
models
understand.
for all this kinds of stuff, right? And so I suspect that for the Wi-Fi sensing guys, that's probably what a big part of it is because yes, they all have their ways of doing it, but you can't do it and have everybody talking a different language, you know, especially if you're trying to push this stuff up to a
Exactly.
a machine learning system.
Mhm.
All that data has to be the same regardless of where
Yeah.
it comes from, otherwise it's totally useless. Right?
Yeah. I think you're bringing such an important point, right? So, and there are different angles from what you've just mentioned right now. The angle number one is that when it comes to Wi-Fi sensing specifically, once again, it's just my personal opinion. It does not represent WA's opinion. I think that the value proposition of proprietary solutions on Wi-Fi sensing, they are always there, but sort of limited. Then when you add the AI layer, and even if we start talking about quantum computing capabilities, I think we are getting to a whole different dimension. And what can be done is outstanding. And here, I totally agree, by the way, that you need to have huge amount of data real to train the models that will make the motion detection and assessments in terms of what really is that figure. Can you really detect through a lot of Wi-Fi signals and spectrum waves, right? Can you really detect exactly what's the physical form of that given object or that given person or the way of walking, right? And it's absolutely unbelievable what can be done when we think about AI and quantum computing on top of sensing and motion detection technology. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to the other side as well, so picking up on that data lake problem. So in WBA we've had for the last year or so AIML for Wi-Fi, a working group as well in WBA, and the
Mm-hmm.
team. And here once again I think applies precisely the 12 steps of sobriety. So basically you've seen that there's like these complete barrier of vendors providing their data. Of course, everyone wants to get access to data, but they don't want to provide their own, which is totally understandable. Totally. Makes sense, right, Jason? So they want, of course, to. It's like Wi-Fi monetization and business models. We thought would be like a wonderful sharing experience to try to come up with new business models, adopt them across the world, pick up models from Philippines, from Asia, from the United States, and deploy them elsewhere in the world. But what we've seen once again is that typical example of people wanting to learn more than to share. Because sometimes people don't really know exactly what to share. That's totally understandable as well. And when it comes to AI/ML, that's the case. So we are talking right now in terms of developing this common data lake for standardizing models. But it's so complex because basically we need to understand first. Okay, so what really are the metrics that we like to collect? And are we going to create some type of standardized data model on top of them, or are we just going to provide raw data and then everyone else develops whatever they want on top? Which, by the way, has been happening as well with another program called Access Network Metrics. So basically, there's now a way through radios technology to pass performance metrics out of the Wi-Fi networks to the identity providers, so such as the operators,
Yeah.
and that is something we are so excited about. But even there, we have talked over the last 2 or 3 years about this thing of okay, should we actually do any data analysis for the IDP, or would they rather want to have the data themselves and do their own assessment? So once again, I think this will come into play when it comes to these data lake
Yeah, and
considerations.
I think that's actually a great dividing line too for the people who would be nervous about not being able to differentiate because it's funny. I brought up the example of Wi-Fi sensing. That's the new case. The
Yeah.
Wi-Fi case is the original case of this, right? Because when you think of Easy Mesh, right? Like the Easy Mesh communication itself is standardized, but the actual algorithm behind the scene of what to tweak when and why based on what information is still proprietary. And that's fine. That's the whole point, right? And everybody is coming
Still
up with a
bringing
better
value.
way of doing it. And there's not, and it's what I really like about that as an example is there is no best way to do that, right?
Mhm.
You could hypothetically probably come up with a best way, the best algorithm ever to manage Wi-Fi in real time. But it's not like it's not going to get better, and it's not like not somebody's going to come up with another solution, right?
Yeah.
There's no perfect, right?
Absolutely. I think it's highly limitative. Absolutely. And
Yeah,
immediately we could also make translations of this topic to economics once again and to society. It's in the short term. Imagine you're able to have the world top experts in a given domain, and they are all brilliant, and they'll develop a model, for example, for tackling Wi-Fi data, for example. But then what you'll see is that in as well as you know very well, Jason, as well in the world of standards, all this is dependent on people, individuals. They rotate jobs, they rotate functions, right? They have different priorities. Their
yeah,
companies, so
yeah,
nothing is certain for the eternity. So basically, what will happen eventually is that standard will become very quickly outdated completely, and it will be binding the industry. And what's going to happen, just for curiosity, most likely is that then we start seeing walk around proprietary solutions once again very quickly, because they don't want to
yeah.
deploy the standard. So the standard needs to be something that it truly adds value to the different vendors and different operators and different alliances right over the world, and different testing as well enterprises, and cannot bind them, cannot limit them. Otherwise, they will
No, right.
never support them.
No, well, right. Because there's no point then, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly. So,
but you're so
absolutely.
right about the personal aspect too. It's like the other thing that we always have to be cognizant of, and that standards kinds of helps because kind of takes it out of everybody's hands.
Mhm.
Um, is that and we've again, as you know, as everybody who's listening knows, like one of the subjects of this show is to show you that yes, there are parts of the internet that are held together by like one guy, right?
And we are aware of that, of course. I'm not sure
Right.
if the general audience sees, but yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And we don't want it to be that way, but it's true. And,
Yeah.
and so it's very helpful to make sure that and it's funny because, you think about in a company, a single company has to have succession planning and things like that. But when you have an entire industry that
Yeah.
is, that is decoupled from that, it's hard to have succession planning. So you have to have
Exactly,
standards in
exactly.
place and people who are trained on the new thing. So it doesn't just go
Exactly.
away.
Exactly. That's a very good point. Absolutely. That's something we're not only from the standard standpoint as well, but also bringing to that initial topic that you mentioned in terms of as well new members coming to the alliances, right? And the rotation, the turnover within companies and from company to company to different roles. We're always as well concerned now from once again the WBA standpoint. We are always concerned in terms of really making sure that new delegates are welcome, that they have the best capabilities to put in place, to put in practice their best work, and actually feel comfortable, so that one day they can become the leaders of the future. Because we know that unavoidably, and that has happened over the years, that some of the key champions today, they will go away eventually. That's part of
Yeah.
life. They will retire, for example. It's
Right.
unavoidable. Even this
Yeah.
year, we've had we had two at least very important champions this year that have retired, and that has been very sad.
Yeah, no, it is, right? And it's like it's so important to have the people who are already passionate about it like on board and ready to go because and I don't know if you've ever run into this, but we've run into situations where the people you find the people who are passionate enough about it, right? That
Mhm.
they want to continue doing that work no matter what company they're working for,
Well,
right?
absolutely,
Or
that's it.
even no company whatsoever. And when something happens in the corporate world that sucks, they're like, what can I do? What can I do so that I can keep doing this? Right.
That's the dream, of course. Absolutely,
You
absolutely.
know? Yeah.
That is so
And some of
important.
them we end up employing them in the standards organization, but
Yeah, that's always an option as well. Absolutely.
right.
We've been seeing some of those cases as well within WBA, of course. So once again, I don't mean to deviate so much to WBA, but just out of curiosity. So it's very broad in terms of roadmap, basically. So we have so many different topics we could talk about. And when it comes to one of the most important subjects in terms of enterprise and roaming, this technology specifically called radios, we have this great group really taking shape that has had a lot of influence as well from Alan de Kock from Inkbridge Networks. He has created free radios basically, and this group is going to eventually tackle some things that have not been able to be addressed from the standards board in this case. So IETF, typically the internet drafts the standardized radios, and when it comes to roaming, still they don't care necessarily if it's being well applied or not. Therefore, we are getting these new faces as well, new big industry champions, I would say, like Alan, joining as well in WBA, and making sure that we're able to help the industry, with much better compliance, making sure that the vendors and different players around the world deploy a given technology to its maximum benefit in that case. Okay,
That's really
so
cool.
that
You
we
said
don't
it's
have interoperability problems.
the
So
creator of Free Radius. You said
exactly, yeah, exactly.
cool.
Yeah,
That's
it
very
just
cool.
yeah, absolutely. He's been involved
Yeah.
occasionally and might be quite involved now. For example, in the working
Yeah.
sessions in Paris last week, there's been a radius proxy issues workshop that I think has been super exciting on that topic. But yeah, Jason,
Cool.
once again, I don't mean to derail. Yeah.
Yeah, you're on the show, man. Don't even worry about
No,
it.
no, no,
Like if you
exactly.
want to. So I actually do have some questions about it. Like, so if so, I always talk about the fact that like my dad is listening, right? So sometimes
Oh,
I'm
really? Okay,
trying to
okay, okay.
explain
Let's
what
see.
my life is like to him, and so
Yeah,
like with like open roaming,
yeah.
right? The WBA fits. I'm like for the average user, you are probably
Mm-hmm.
experiencing a technology that WBA has made when you are on public
Mm-hmm.
Wi-Fi, right? Or
Yeah.
if you've gone to like a stadium or any of those places where all that stuff is happening,
And
right?
wholesale as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Wholesale even
yeah.
more.
So
Yeah. Mhm.
and so that basically is like a bunch of standards that makes it so that that process, that experience for you is way easier.
Exactly, exactly. And there's so much to be said about it.
Yeah,
Absolutely, Jason. So we are super excited really about open roaming because we truly, genuinely believe that the experience is amazing. So when we came to the hotel in Mercure, now in Paris, basically I brought two laptops and my cellular, and basically they all three of them, because they were already pre-provisioned somewhere else in the past, right? They got immediately connected, and that's that type of wonderful experience where you're going to a Marriott hotel and they are trying to check if you still have the Bonvoy app or not, and you tell the lady at the lobby desk that, oh no, don't bother, I'm already connected. So
yeah.
that's the type
No,
of thing that
that's cool.
it's
That's
wonderful. Yeah.
I love when like so I am a Bonvoy guy, right? Since it's like Marriott
Mhm.
is one of the it's where we stay most of the time.
Fantastic.
And it's just magical. It's like I
Yeah,
never
yeah.
left the last hotel. It's like, boop, there we go.
Exactly. And of course, general audience, they don't really understand, and that's such a fascinating topic by itself as well, because we talk about these over and over again in the WBA. So over the last 2 weeks, we were discussing in the TNI work group, the testing interoperability work group, a lot about awareness, and there are many members in the WBA, in fact, that their vision is that we should be talking a lot more about Passpoint and open roaming with the end user. And here I can provide you my personal opinion. Of course, that will never affect the work because I'll always be there to support them. Okay, but but I don't believe that is really possible, because when I look
Yeah.
to the end user, and I thought about my mother or my father, right, and even my friends of my age, right, it's absolutely virtually impossible that they will ever try even be involved to understand Passpoint, open roaming, installing profiles,
Yeah.
disconnecting from Wi-Fi to then connect automatically. It's just impossible.
No, it is. And
Connectivity is a commodity. Yeah, sorry.
it is. It's like one of the things that I always try to say is like a grounding point for everybody, right? And
Mhm.
I'm sure this has come up in your mind too. To the people who are there making the standards is that none of us are the use case.
Exactly, exactly. It's a, and that's so hard to
We're the
illustrate
point
sometimes.
zero one percent of people who understand like how this works, right?
Exactly,
And maybe we
exactly.
care, right? So like when people are designing for like, oh well, they're going to want to change this, and it's like, no, nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to consciously touch any of this because they just want it to
Exactly,
work.
exactly,
They just want it to work all the time, no matter what. They
exactly.
don't care.
I would say it's the top commodity. It's like water, electricity. It's unbelievable. People, they don't care. They don't want to know how it works. I mean, now in April, for example, we've had a shutdown in Portugal, in Spain, electricity shutdown, and all of a sudden everyone was so curious about electric power grid and stuff, trying to understand renewable energy, trying to understand what happened. But generally speaking, right, people don't really bother, and I think that must mean something to us. So I think that the standard in this way needs to be something that is going to be put in place through the enterprise space, so through the operators, through enterprise IDPs such as Merit, for example, through the airlines, right? So applications that you really want to use that are sticky in your phone, so that you don't actually uninstall them after the first usage, right? And there needs to be completely, as we always say, seamless, completely transparent, or completely automatic to the end
Really,
user.
right?
And I
Especially when it
think
comes
that
to like
exactly.
mobile, like to mobile and Wi-Fi convergence, right? Because that is
Yeah.
especially like again, and I love to try to explain to people who because it kind of it frustrates me how siloed a lot of technologies get, right? But as you know, a lot of it's just about the people, right? It's like this is
Yeah,
the investment they've
absolutely.
made, this is the world they're in, this is what they understand. They're not for nothing. They were probably involved in the creation of a lot of these things, and they probably think it's better than other things, and that's
Yeah,
okay, right?
yeah,
I
that's
feel
totally
that
fine.
way
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there is absolutely zero way for me to explain to my 5 year old the difference between a mobile connection on the phone and a Wi-Fi connection. Nope.
It's yeah. Even if you can, of course, you can try. You can buy them out. Hey guys, just really listen to this explanation for 30 minutes, and then we'll do a test to see if you understood. But it's really tough. I think we need to understand and respect as well that human nature is in a certain way, right? And there's so much pressure these days, so much communication, so many advertisements, so many pressure really for getting your attention, basically. So I really believe that when it comes to open roaming, we are really excited because we know that it works really well. It's very important for the IDPs to have that option available beyond the captive portal because it's so much more, so much safer and automatic. But also for the operators, right, to do their indoor connectivity offload as well. It will provide as well mission critical and services use case that were not possible as well in the past in Wi-Fi, for example, will save lives. It will provide connectivity across the
Oh, right.
world.
Because
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because you're right. You're absolutely right. Because it's not even just about the customer experience, which captive portals are all terrible and everybody hates them. Right. But to have to do that in an emergency is like, what? No.
It's impossible. It's impossible. So yeah. It's yeah. So it's just a good example, I would say. There are so many more that we could talk about, but it's a good example of technology coming into play and adding at least that very strong option for other vendors in the world to create their own businesses, right? To the operators to have that offload capability. Once again, talking about this trend in terms of optimizing of efficiency, reducing costs. It's so important really for operators, I feel,
Yeah.
because we are in a world where they are not being able to get more revenues. I mean, some of them are, but it's because they have a higher efficiency internally and they're able to pass a part of the costs to the end user, to the end consumer. And that's a case of certain operators I can think about, but most of the operators, they have a very fixed line of costs, a long-term debt, and they are not able really to get more revenue from the users. So they need really to increase their internal efficiency. Yeah. And
Right.
that's why
Right. Yeah.
Wi-Fi is so important, low cost, energy emissions and stuff, all that sustainability, rolling
Right.
over topics are so important
And
as
it
well.
right. And it doesn't make the whole reason why we exist is because
Yeah,
there's no reason why every single operator on the planet has to solve that problem themselves. It
exactly,
doesn't make
exactly.
any sense. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But very
It's
good.
just roles to do
Yeah.
it.
There are so many topics we could talk about there. Absolutely.
It's my favorite example, obviously, because I'm very close to Tier 69 and USP, right?
Yeah,
Very,
absolutely.
very, very close, right?
Very close.
They're like
Also,
they're like my children, right? So like,
exactly, exactly.
so getting to see it everywhere at Network X was awesome, right? On
Yeah,
everybody's
what's
signs.
the
I'm like,
experience,
oh,
right?
you
Yeah.
know, that's there it is, right? But my favorite is when um, knowledge of these things suddenly leaks out into the public. Usually
Mm-hmm.
because of some security thing, right?
Hackers. Yeah,
Or in like a
activities.
forum, right? And you'll
Mm-hmm.
see people be like, oh, what's this Tier 69 thing that's active on my thing? Like, who is that? What are they doing, right? And
Exactly.
then I'll see, you know, on forums, you know, my local town forums and stuff, people being like, make sure you turn that stuff off because that's how they spy on you and stuff. And I'm like, no,
Exactly.
don't do
No,
that.
exactly. Exactly. But that happens as well with location. Is
Yeah,
another example of a feature that can help so much. Really, can bring so much value for such a variety of use cases, and people see it turned on and they are scared of it because they think they
Yeah.
might be tracked. But
Oh no,
Jason, really, yeah, yeah,
it's like you're already if you have one of these things in your hand,
there's
don't
nothing. Yeah.
stop trying to have privacy.
I've stopped already, but some days ago, a guy told me that I know who he is actually. I recall very well that conversation. Told me that it's about principles. Even though I totally agree, by the way, but I really feel powerless, right? So I just think that I have nothing to hide. So please go ahead. I mean, what can I do? But in any case, Jason, you've done such an important work really in BBF, right? And we are so happy as well to have you within WBA. We just hope we can have as much value as possible to KKFA, and that must
Sure.
feel really nice for you to see coming to life all the work that you've done over the years as well.
Oh, for real. And that's one of my favorite interactions that I've had with the WBA way before we were even members, right? Way before, right? Was the operator
Mhm.
managed Wi-Fi project, right? Because it went down the road it did.
Absolutely,
And you
absolutely.
guys were
Mhm.
like, you know what? We should just probably just do USB and Tier 181. And you did. And it's great.
Exactly,
And
exactly. That has always been there from the get-go. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. It's such
And
an important
so,
part of the overall architecture.
no, and what's so fantastic about that is something that is a drive. Obviously, like the driver was there, and that's why you did it, right? Because the members were coming and saying, we need this. And
Exactly.
it's sometimes we forget that we don't have to do everything. And also, we can't do everything. Like, there's just not enough bandwidth in the world for us to be able to do all that work. So, putting together that architecture was something that BBF probably should have always done, but there's no way that
Possibly,
we
yeah,
had the
possibly.
time to do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's just about priorities as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
So it was cool.
and
It was very
yeah,
nice.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we also been
And then I
involved
like
in
how
the
it's
IoT and smart
translating down
home.
into the
Mhm.
how it's translating down into the smart home stuff now too, which is very cool.
Exactly, exactly. The MDU
Yeah.
environment absolutely is so important as well. I really actually love that idea that we've also been discussing with the edge computing capabilities into the overall compounding network and the decentralized
Hmm.
services. Really, I personally find it quite nice. All in all, Jason, right? So all things when it comes to operating managed Wi-Fi, when it comes to finding optimized architecture standards, they always relate to the fact that most of the players and most of the operators these days they don't want to be bound, sorry my English, to certain types of technologies. They want to have the
Right.
flexibility to change the vendor, to experiment, to develop their own equipment as well, and
Right.
to see exactly what's the best solution that is future proof, so that even if they change their mind, if a new leadership comes into play and has a different perspective, they can do it. They are not
Right.
bound by
Right.
given
Right.
armor.
Yeah. See,
So
there you go, everybody. That's the talking points. We're gonna write those down. We're gonna come up with the product positioning of networking standards.
exactly.
Those are
It's
the
been
keys right there.
absolutely. But yeah,
Cool.
it has been really cool as well. All this journey that we've taken as well within operating manager Wi-Fi. Now we are also trying to create the compliance test regime. I think very briefly, Jason, for maybe for some of the final minutes, I could also share some thoughts in terms of the way I personally see the topic of certification, because
Hmm.
these might vary across the industry. Other people might have different perspectives. And by all means, I don't mean to as well say that WBA as an industry body will do something different. So my point is the following: I do believe that we've come to a point where people don't really like the concept of a certification. So I've come to that idea that they don't want to be bound once again. So I really believe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, right, when Wi-Fi came forward, for example, uh, what used to happen is that a small set of players, they thought that they could get a moat, so basically an infinite competitive advantage if they would create a certification that only that small group of people could pass, right? So
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is, in my mind, the idea for the certification. That's why members in general create certifications, because they want to
Right.
protect that
It's almost like
competitive.
it's like rent seeking, right? Yeah.
Exactly. I would say. So, but times have evolved. Over the years, people thought that the certification model, the business model, was so fascinating, right? Because you could create a certification and then you have returning revenues every year on that certification. And therefore many have popped up over the years. And I think we've come to a point where they don't want to be bound by a
Right.
certification, and what we need to accomplish really is the value of the certification without the cost associated. And that's why we are trying to come up, let's see if that's possible, to try to come up with an autonomous, almost automated self-testing compliance that, of course, can be done then with a product specifically, such as CD router. That's also the end vision for the operator managed Wi-Fi program. But ultimately, that any vendor in the world can test, any operator in the world can test as well if they wish autonomously, and that's the type of value that we're trying to bring. We know it's not
So
a
that they're the
generation
ones that are just
version.
consuming the results directly,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And they don't have to go through sort of this entire process. So I have a
Exactly.
lot of opinions on certification, obviously. Um, and I actually agree with you on a number of points. And it's actually a position um, that UNH used to have a long time ago, right? And it kind of goes
Mhm.
like this, it goes in
Yes, it is
waves.
possible. Hmm.
It's more like, a verbose report of what is happening on the interoperability side that you can derive your own conclusions from is more valuable than just a sticker, right? Sometimes
Hmm.
the point of certification is such that there's a baseline that the person purchasing the product that is certified doesn't have to worry about, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's a big value,
But
definitely.
I think the problem, and that it's again, my views do not reflect those of QA Cafe or its ownership.
Disclaimer.
I think the problem is a little bit like the number of certifications, and I think that in the same sense that you were talking about earlier about how standards organizations sometimes get a little obsessed about branding their things and then
Hmm.
trying to make sure that everybody knows that brand, but really it's
Yeah,
no
it's
nobody
that's the
cares,
dream. I
right?
understand it, but I
Right?
mean,
But
there
really
are
nobody
small.
cares, and
Yeah.
like it's they just want it to work, and so I've always sort of seen it, and I've talked about this with a couple of other groups, obviously that we do certification for. I think what people would want in the
Mhm.
future is not a certification that is specific to a particular technology or specific to a particular group, but a certification that is specific to a particular product,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
imagine if we all got together. I'm saying it here first, everybody. Ready? Imagine if we all got together, all of these SDOs, and we said, this is a certification for broadband Wi-Fi gateways,
Just imagine that is a dream. Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And it will incorporate all the things from all the different things, right? And all the open source guys will get their testing done, and they'll test each of the protocol interfaces, right? And it'll be
Hmm.
one big thing, and you get it one time, and it is designed to certify the kind of thing you're making, not the little
Hmm.
individual piece of components that you put in it,
Of
right?
course, you're totally. I think you're totally right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? And
That
how
is a big
cool would
dream.
that
Yeah.
be?
Yeah. Absolutely. That would be an amazing, amazing dream. Absolutely.
What we should
Without
do
having
is make
any
another
limitation.
standards body.
Exactly. Let's just create one. Exactly. That's a very good point.
And that's
It's
my
a
dream
yeah.
personally. And it
Mhm.
came up a couple times over the last few years, and especially last week, of the consumer awareness of the broadband gateway and what it means to them.
Mhm.
And I would love a world where the words service hub or whatever we call it is used more, and people value that box like they do their refrigerator or their TV, right? Because
Yeah, I totally
it's
understand, man.
it's
Yeah,
responsible for everything.
yeah, but
And they
yeah,
value it enough that they don't stuff it in a closet, which will help everyone's Wi-Fi.
the people do that. Actually, that's unbelievable. Well, because sometimes they might think it's sort of ugly, right? They think, oh, I don't want that in
Yeah,
my
yeah.
living room,
So
so
I would
I'll
just
just
put
put
it
it
over
away in the
here.
closet.
I'm going to put it over here in
That's
this
amazing.
metal cage.
Exactly. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, I think it's I totally understand. Once again, right? So I think the dream is that one. Um, well, I think we are in this trend of conglomeration, aggregation, cost efficiency. So I really believe, for example, one of the things that we'd love to see happening is that the operators would be willing to have better CPs, better gateways, better equipment at the home of the clients, right, at the home of the users. And so often we see around the world that that's not the case because once again they're trying to minimize costs.
Right.
And there's
So they
nothing
don't
wrong.
want to
I totally
roll everything
understand,
out
right?
again. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we need to understand that the business dynamics they dictate everything basically. But we would love to see the value add of more advanced features coming into the residential space, sorry,
Right.
and basically having the operator specifically or the network owner, right, the connectivity provider, basically seeing it as an added value and getting extra revenue generation from that. we'd love to see
Yeah.
it really.
Yeah. And seeing the value of it. So like, and again, I'll
Yeah.
probably talk about this more in the future. But the recent survey that Broadband Forum did in comparison to their last survey, real quick,
Okay.
I'll give you the short version,
No, absolutely.
is
But I
that
think I know about it because we've seen that promotion within WBA as well. Martin Casey from Calix. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. It was really, really good. And so in the survey, I know the one you're talking about. This is a little different, but
Ah,
it's
okay,
still
it's
kind of
different. Okay,
along the
sorry.
same lines.
Okay.
This one was talking about is basically a survey about services led broadband and monetizing value added services and all this. And the biggest the willingness of the operators to try it actually went down in 2 years, not by a lot. But the biggest problem that they said was that they don't know how to sell it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Like
That
their
makes sense.
marketing people don't know how to sell it. Their salespeople don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the knowledge of how to sell it. They're used to
Of
selling
course.
speed and cost, right? And they don't.
Makes
They have no
total
idea,
sense.
right? And so that's our next task is to be like, okay, we've said this before that this is what you're going to need, or you're going to become irrelevant. But let's help you.
Yeah, I totally understand. I totally understand. I think
You
that's
know,
such an important point. Absolutely. They don't know
yeah,
exactly how to drive value from it, perceived value, right? And that is so critical for that users, for example, 5G, right? If you ask me, I think we can reasonably say right now that 5G has been a big disappointment for the operators all around the world. There was such a huge expectations with 5G, and they've noticed, I think, sadly for them, I would say, that users don't care. They have 4G, that's more than fine. They're not willing to pay €5 per month to have 5G. It's unbelievable. There's no
no,
way
it's
to
right.
get one more
Does
year
it
for it.
work
Yeah,
or does it not work? And
exactly, exactly.
this is really great, Pedro, because I've
Yeah,
been waiting to tell this story, so I'm glad that it came up. And I know you probably have to go in a few minutes, so I'm going to make this
no, that's
quick.
fine. So,
When I started Epik Mellon,
mhm.
using that term, because I tell you why it's called that?
I
Because
think I've seen it in a different episode as well.
here
But
we
yeah,
are.
you can repeat, of course, just
Yeah,
sure.
the Greek for the future of communications is epikonoia melon, right? And I'm like, oh, Epik Mellon. Okay, obviously I have to do that,
Makes
right?
yeah,
So
total sense.
I
Easy as everything.
started
Yeah,
off ages ago with
yeah.
my ADHD brain with a blog, and I only had made like a couple entries. And one of the things that I had said in it was this whole they want to just work thing, but it was like the definition of what broadband is. And
Mhm.
for me, the definition was that you have a seamless experience that is in excess of whatever it is that you need to for the applications you're trying to use.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's it.
That's very good.
That's it.
Yeah, very good.
So
Exactly.
as long as the network connectivity and latency
Allows
and
for
all these other
everything.
things that we care about, right? As long as the quality of experience exceeds the needs by enough, right?
Exactly,
Exceeds a
exactly.
little
So,
bit, right?
mhm.
For whatever it is that people want to do those days, then that's broadband.
Exactly,
And that's
exactly.
not to
I
say
totally
that
agree.
people aren't going to try to find harder things or big, more demanding applications in the future, and that's fine. And when that happens, then people will see the pressure and they'll have a bad experience and they'll want something better, and then it will shift again. Like
Absolutely, I
yeah,
totally agree with you. That's such a simple, beautiful way to really understand what's really important, right? What is really important, and so very often we are focused on the next generation of X and Y, right? We are always trying to push forward, and that's also very important because that's ultimately what will push forward as well technology
mhm,
and connectivity. But the way you see it as well, the way you put it, it's wonderful because once again, that's all that is necessary for the entire humanity, and that's
right.
what we're trying to achieve here as well, a little bit, at least I would say.
Yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
And I'll leave on this anecdote. You mentioned the whole legacy devices and operators not wanting to replace all their stuff. Right? We're in a very cool position with the stuff that we're building, especially around containerization and stuff, because it's all software, right? And
Exactly.
Zach had Zach, who does all of our packet analysis stuff here, right? So CloudShark and Packet Viewer and all that stuff. He had a really great quote the other day that I wrote down because he was describing something that sounded pretty amazing. And I said, "Is that even possible?" And he goes, "Anything's possible. It's
Amazing
software."
as well. Of course, it's like just like magic, of course. That's true. That's true. I think
Thank you very much, Pedro. I'm sure you and I are going to have many more conversations about this. We could do an entire episode about economics because I love it.
uh,
It's my
maybe
baby.
sorry if I
Baby inside
turned so much in terms of that side as well. That's something I'm very passionate about. But it was
Yeah,
truly a pleasure, really, Jason. I really appreciate the
yeah.
time and the opportunity.
No, Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much, really. Really
So
appreciate it.
please do, if you have any questions for Pedro, please do put them as comments in here. Algorithms like comments. Do subscribe to this on YouTube or on your favorite podcast channel so that you can automatically. So I know that I'm doing a good job and you will automatically get my episodes. And above all, own the nerdy things that you love and have fun doing them. Thanks, Pedro.